Welcome to the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. Each episode we talk about the research and practical aspects of the trauma informed movement. This podcast is not designed to replace mental health services. If you feel uncomfortable or triggered by our discussion, please consider seeking your own trauma treatment. In no way is seeking treatment an admission of weakness. It is a chance to build resiliency and experience post-traumatic growth. You can find show notes, resources, and more at traumainformedlens.org. Welcome to the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. I am Matt Bennett. Welcome back to another episode. We're doing another crossover episode with Jeff Summers and the Optimal HRV. I've been doing a ton of self-care trainings, looking even at some leadership trainings now, which I love doing too. I, in this episode, get a little honest about the wear and tear that 2020/21 is also having on me. One of the things I love about heart rate variability is that it shows how well your proactive and reactive self-care strategies, proactive being what you do every day to stay healthy, reactive being what you do when you start to feel exhausted, how well those are working, and gives you some real tangible quantitative feedback. And so in this episode, I just am very honest about some of my struggles and also what some recent HRV scores, especially when I got the vaccination just recently, has shown me. So we're going to jump back into talking about group recovery next week, and then got some great interviews lined up as well. So we'll get back. We got one more week of these crossover episodes, and then we'll get back into some great interviews coming up. But I thought this was worth sharing. A little bit vulnerable here for me. But also, even though I think about this stuff, I train about this stuff, I focus on this stuff every single day, whether it's my mindfulness practice, getting out and moving, exercising, everything that I teach, I do. We've been under a ton of stress, and I've got data to show right now, at least, not doing the best job in the world handling it. And I also talk about my strategy to get back into my best self. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I will see you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Jeff Summers here, co-founder of Optimal HRV, with my fellow co-founder and partner in crime, Matt Bennett.
Hey, Jeff.
Matt, how are you?
I'm happy to be here with you.
You're a little stressed these days.
I am stressed these days. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that on this episode.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, last week we kind of talked to the return to quote unquote normal and the impact that was going to have for folks. And I think we'll continue that discussion at some point. But I think it was a little bit more timely to kind of show people what this process is looking like. And we're going to get a little personal today for you, Matt.
Yes.
And I think that's okay. I think it's good to sort of highlight to everybody how things in your life can affect heart rate variability. And you've had a lot of different things going on in your life. So I think it's going to be really good for people to see the, just variation to which, you can see your scores coming in and learn about what you can attribute them to, and maybe some surprises in terms of how you expected your HRV to react to certain things, and it didn't always do that.
Absolutely. And really, I just thought it was important. We talked about on the last episode how we could use, and we talked a lot, actually, we talked a little bit about HRV at the end, about looking at recovering, looking at how we've created a balance to this very stressful time that we've gone through the last 13 or so months. And really, at the very end of that, we talked about, HRV helps you really measure as we transition. And that was really what we were talking about at the time. As we transition, even though transitions may be positive, is a lot of us have really adjusted to this sort of new normal. I know, Jeff, you and I, who are usually on airplanes 3 or so times a month, and that might be
sometimes a week.
slow one for us.
Exactly.
I don't know what it's like to be on an airplane anymore. Like I don't know. I don't like, I think you go to the airport, that's kind of like, we were joking. It's like Denver airport, there's been a bunch of construction, and I-70 where we take to get there has been a bunch of construction. I've not been anywhere close to that, for the first time since I've really been in Colorado for ever. And of course you had to tell me there's still all kinds of construction and I'll never know any difference.
Yeah, so, it's like it never happened. Yeah. Nothing's changed in a year. I'm not quite sure how, but
yeah. Hence what seems to be happening at DIA construction wise. So
exactly.
Yes, not everything runs smoothly. So I thought I'd just take a little bit of time today. And if you're listening to this, I'll try to do the best I can verbally to talk about what's on the screen, but I want to share my screen a little bit because, I listened to pretty much all the HRV podcasts out there, and most of the other HRV podcasts, and we do this as well, talk about sort of stuff around HRV as well. We've tried to make this a little bit more specific on heart rate variability. But one of the things with those podcasts that I just have to chuckle about, and one of my favorite ones, I listen to them all. I've listened to all episodes of them. So if you are like me and just a nerd about this stuff and know the podcast I'm talking about, just so you know, I've listened to every episode of this podcast. I'll continue to. I learn from it. I like it. But I had to just chuckle as they had this business guy, billionaire, CEO on, who just ran his first marathon a couple years back and got a 2 hour and 35 minutes. And I'm like, who are these people? Like, my other favorite was they dropped this Navy SEAL 20 miles out in the ocean with a 50-pound weight on his back, swam in, and then ran to San Francisco from San Diego. I'm like, this you need to have an asterisk of this person is a superhuman who doesn't really represent most of us. And one of the things you don't hear a lot about those shows is what stress does to the rest of us. And I get it, if you have a guest, you're not going to talk about their burnout because that's pretty boring. But I've got some interesting data, and I think it's important to show one of the things that while we really wanted to help, people maybe that are in the helping and healing services, track post-traumatic growth or track the effectiveness of medical interventions and other interventions, resources, those sort of things. What we realized we were also creating was a really great way to help professionals in the fields that burn out pretty much more than any other professions. When we talk about healthcare, social services, education, criminal justice, that's 1 through 7 right there. How we use heart rate variability. Again, if you're just joining us, heart rate variability very simply represents our ability to handle or recover from stress. How do we use this to promote the health of the workforce and also the organizations in which these workers go to every day with this? And so one of the things that, and you can read this in the book that you can download at optimalhrv.org that we wrote, was how do we measure burnout? And while I can show up on these Zooms and you're like, this guy might be on something, but burnout doesn't seem to be it. What is this guy's caffeine regimen? And I get that energy that I bring, but I'm probably just going to tilt over and kind of pass out after this as well. I've been doing trainings now since 7 a.m. this morning, and it's pushing 2 now. But right now, even though I can have these bursts of normal Matt is not doing well right now. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I got stress in my personal life. Nothing serious, Mom. Don't worry. It's exciting stuff. It's just stressful right now. You always you don't want to get the call from Mom and say, Matt, what's going on? I'm worried about you. It's all okay, Mom, if you're listening. but there's stress there. Tax season. I know, Jeff, you've really stepped up for our organization taxes, but I've got a couple organizations, personal taxes, all that. It's tax time. You never know how that's going to turn out. And then just like the wear and tear of COVID. And so I just kind of wanted to be a little vulnerable with people and say, what does it look like when Matt schedules a 3-day weekend, with also probably the understanding that I probably need a little bit more time off? I just found that I need to get out of the house. And so I got shot 1, and that will be part of my data presentation, my Moderna shot on about 4 days ago. So I want to look at that data too, but I'm going to share my screen with folks here. And again, I'll try to walk people through it if they're just talking about it here. So, Jeff, can you see that okay?
I can, yeah.
So I've got, by the way, I got our new screenshot, which is exciting as well here. So shout out to Ben and Viv, who will at some point be on the show to talk a little bit more about this. But the new blue, deep blue screenshot. So here's my HRV. Now I'm going to go to the screen that shows my averages because I want to brag about myself before I talk about where I'm at right now. So, being an older gentleman, my population norm is 23. Now, before you get too impressed with me, the standard deviation, which is really when you say one standard deviation, that's where 66% of the population lie. But the average for my age and gender is 23. Now, again, standard deviation, I'm not that great, but I'm a guy who trains on self-care. I've shared my self-care strategies on this podcast many times. I drink that god-awful shake that somehow has sort of gotten famous, more so than I am. That shake needs a Twitter account, Jeff. We need to talk to our marketing department working on getting that shake a Twitter account.
There you go.
Yeah, but if you look at this, my all-time average is 62. So, hey, let's step back and pat myself on the back a little bit. I'm way outperforming. In fact, I'm 2 standard deviations above the norm. In other words, I'm very healthy for my age and gender. I'll knock on some wood because that's not the current trend. However, now let's look at recent month. My last month average, which, like I said, I'm just going to admit, I'm struggling. I'm managing a lot of things, got a lot of stress, probably been dealing with that for too long without a significant break. So you look at like my last month's reading is 58 versus the 62. Now, it may not sound like a lot, and in reality, it's not. But when you start to talk about, I take a reading at least every morning, that 30 readings is significantly lower, probably about 7% lower than my all-time average. That to me, Jeff, it's a warning. It's like, dude, you need to sort of pay attention to where you are at. Now, my last week is at 51. So now my last week, which is rare for me, I'm solidly in the yellow. I'm in the warning zone, not necessarily the scary zone yet. But now I'm 20 points below my all-time average. Now I'm still almost double my population norm, but I want to, as we've talked about in this podcast over and over again, if you're going to pay attention to the one thing, it's your own all-time average. I can feel good if I need a little dopamine boost to think about population norms. But here I am 51 versus 62. That's telling you that, my last 7 days reading, and you don't have to look all except for the next box, is I had a really good reading a couple of days ago to get a 99. So that 51 includes the 99, which is not my typical, as I'll show you in a second, my last week. So that 51 is a little bit artificially high because something happened with me in the Moderna shot. Which we'll talk about here in a second. But I'm not doing well. And I think what does heart rate variability do for maybe the guy who will never run a 2 hour and 35-minute marathon? It just won't happen. Like, you may say, well, you just got to work hard enough, Matt. It's like, nope. Biologically speaking, the 18-year-old Matt could not have ever run that. That's just being realistic. Like,
I want to see 6'7" Matt running that pace for that distance. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that is like 3 times my marathon kind of level speed, if there is such a thing. There's no interest in doing that either. But hey, good for superhuman beings on other podcasts. So again, if we look at this, here's a human being in front of you. Yeah, started an HRV company, doing blah blah blah, training on self-care even. My body through heart rate variability is telling you, dude, pay attention to this. And so this, again, it's very simple. And that's what I love about both our app, but also just this science is, yeah, my last week, not good. Now, if you go to another graph here, and I'll kind of walk through those listening, this is my, if you look at one of our main pages where you can look at this, is basically we give you a week's worth of data on a chart versus your all-time average. Now you can look at this, and this is fascinating to me, Jeff. I think there's it just may be I'm weird, but there also could be an interesting, I wish that we had more data and we were people, and maybe this can be something moving forward. What happens when you get a COVID vaccination shot? Because I got my COVID shot on April 10th. Now, you look at what Matt's doing leading up to April 10th, and I look back at some of my historical data as well. This has been my trend now for about 2 weeks. So you look at what's leading up to the April 10th shot, kind of maybe high 40s, low 50s. In other words, very yellow for me, dropping down into the 30s, red day, red day, red day. So I go and get, plus my wife is now bringing home germs from her first graders again that aren't COVID, but are just annoying colds. So I got that going on as well. But then on April 10th, not a great day for me. One of my lowest readings probably in the last few months. All of a sudden I get my shot. I feel terrible. In fact, I start to get like a headache and low grade headache, low grade nausea. Didn't throw up or anything because our listeners will want to know that, I'm sure. But just like all of a sudden I get the shot. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I didn't expect it to hit that quickly, and not enough for me to like alert the medical professionals out there in the world that, hey, I need emergency attention right now. But just like I felt it. And then if you look at my data, what happens is I go from about a 30 and the next day I feel really bad. Like I didn't really move much on Sunday. It was sort of a nicer day out, and I just laid up on the porch with a blanket on and listened to a podcast and kind of floated in and out of napping. I really didn't feel good. But look what happens on the 11th too. Even though I didn't want to move, all of a sudden my HRV is higher than it's probably been in the last 2 weeks. So even though, and this is counterintuitive, I felt horrible, all of a sudden something with the shot. And if I were to guess, though this is incredibly unscientific, the immune system is connected to the parasympathetic ventral vagal, the kind of the resting part of your nervous system. So my question is did the shot activate that part of my nervous system? And even though my immune response made me feel like I had kind of a low grade flu, was there some sort of something biological? Then yesterday, all of a sudden it jumps up. I'm still feeling pretty horrible. Jumps up to like 90s. Like, I'm like, I don't feel good. Like, I think we had like a 1:30 team call. At 2:30, I went down and I just laid down and like basically crashed for the rest of the night. But my heart rate variability is great. This is usually not what happens. Usually I can predict I at least can predict my color when I wake up in the morning. Right. Then it's like, I woke up today feeling better than I have the last 3 days, but burnout. Then you look at this and I get a 30, and again, to flip back to this page, a 30 is half of my normal heart rate variability, but sort of back to where I've been in the last few weeks. So I just wanted to put this out there to say, when I see this, what is going on? And I think my answer to that is, okay, going through stressful stuff. Don't worry, mom. It could be great stuff, but stressful, taxes, some other stuff going on. Work is really picked up, exciting, but a lot of projects I'm trying to juggle going on. All those, and my wife brings home a couple first grade, like stupid 24-hour colds that I had to deal with. So, I'm going through all this. Basically, what I'm on the edge of right now is, we talked about this in way earlier podcasts, but that exhaustion stage of burnout, right? I am right there, probably solidly in, as somebody who pays attention to this. I'm right there. So what do I do? One is I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm eating, not drinking a lot of alcohol, not eating a lot, trying to still go on longer walks, but kind of skipping the harder workouts until I at least feel a little bit better. But I also was able to somehow, kind of miracle, find this Friday I could take a day off. And so usually if I catch this early enough, and what I'm wondering about honestly is 3 days going to be enough, that a 3-day weekend allows me to bounce back. I looked at the forecast. Unfortunately, it's wintertime again in Colorado, which is kind of a bummer because love to go hiking or something during this time. But need to be healthy, but I'll probably just need to crash a little bit too. And so this is a way that, having paid attention to my HRV now for, probably haven't measured us well over a year, almost daily, rarely miss a day. I know that a weekly average of 51, not good. I know getting these 30s for a daily readings over the last 2 weeks, the majority of my readings have been in 30. My body is not, again, let's go back to the definition, not recovering from stress well. What do I know? Can still show up and I think give a pretty good training, can hopefully bring a good energy to the podcast. But what I also know is that if I don't pay attention to this, that's not going to be sustainable over time as well. So, Jeff, I just thought this was really powerful example of, there are superhuman beings you can drop in the middle of the ocean with a 50-pound weight on their back. They'll swim to shore and then go run the length of California. Not me. I know in your prime, Jeff, that you could probably have done something like that. But
easy, yeah, of course.
Nor I'd love to walk the coast of California. That kind of free time, but so for normal kind of human beings who deal with the ups and downs of life, this really, I think this 2-week stretch that I've had, that's really impacting my monthly, but my weekly data as well, is just showing, hey, this is what it looks like. And this is probably where, a lot of people who are struggling with burnout and other things just because of COVID and everything else, that, this is how you can really use HRV and then hopefully have some sort of plan. Like for me, it's 3-day weekends. That's my best short-term measure to get through this. That hopefully that will allow me to recover. I'm also, I know the rest of April's crazy busy, May's crazy busy. Maybe in June, time to start to maybe look at a week off and getting that on the calendar. It's been a long time since I've really had a vacation of anything worth even mentioning. So again, these are my key things. I believe I've shared on this podcast. I know with what I've been through, I also need therapy as well. Go and get me some of this cognitive behavioral therapy. Been hanging around to way too much anxiety. That tool is going to make me more resilient. I'm also still holding on to, I want to get that second shot so I can sit in a room, because I cannot do another Zoom meeting. Like therapy, it's going to be beneficial. You can do a thing. I want to be in a room with a human being and get my help that way. So, I've got these plans, but again, this helps me measure. 2 weeks ago, I'd say, yeah, no problem. I'll get to summer. I can sit in that room with the therapist, get my second shot. Here, I've got to take some steps in order to get there, while still giving you, as my teammate and co-founder, the rest of our team, folks that I train today are going to train tomorrow, give them my best energy as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of sort of real life application, and you sort of, you sort of talked about this stuff so much, and sort of using these numbers and giving some really interesting examples, especially the dichotomy of the vaccination and what you expected it to do versus what it actually did. I think just helps people understand that, number one, you got to be looking at trends, and there's going to be, weird readings that are going to happen, both high and low, that, like you said, you wake up, and I'm the same way. I think I know what it's going to be, but and most of the time it is.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, that's not the case. And the fact that the data's trended and is something that you can sort of normalize becomes really important. And I was, when you told me the story about this earlier in the week, I thought it was really interesting. So I'm glad it was a topic of the podcast today.
Yeah, and it goes back to like this in or study of one. I mean, that's what is fascinating. Yeah, hey, if we had a whole organization, if we had a whole patient population, we had a whole team, a whole gym, we're doing a really exciting study that we'll, I'm sure, talk about at some point. You using the app is, yeah, you can look at that accumulative data and just get such a rich amount of information. But the other great thing too is, I have questions like, why did the vaccination make me feel like I had COVID, a milder form of, like, I got hit pretty hard for the first shot. Like I knew the second shot, but hey, come on. But
and you got hit right away.
Exactly. And I think honestly, weirdly, it's probably like, yeah, I have a pretty healthy immune system. So it reacted pretty powerfully to the vaccination being introduced. So maybe a really good parasympathetic reaction, but it's really the first time where I like took my score and like, I'm like a 6, not a 90. Like it just like was so different. And like, I'm interested now because I have the N of 1 and I've got the historical data to say, okay, here's my first vaccination. What's the second one going to look like? Right. Even though I feel horrible, do I really have the energy to go do things more than I thought I should? Am I going to crash more? And so again, we can have these Ns of 1. And like I said, it's one of the best early warning systems. We've talked about how drops in COVID don't diagnose, but can predict like 9 out of the 10 leading causes of death. And I think that while that's the extreme example of this, it also can say, hey, Matt, you are in exhaustion stage. And okay, time to get out that self-care plan. When you're there, what do you do? And, my number one thing I found, 3-day weekend, that extra day is almost magical in some way. And probably to look down the road, and say, hey, when can I get that week off? I'm overdue for that, need that. Have that second shot, be able to actually do things on vacation instead of just play Xbox, which is healthy for the first 3 days, but then gets pretty dysfunctional after that. So yeah, it really helps alert it. Again, if you would ask me, without HRV, are you feeling burnout right now? I'd probably say, yeah, but I may not have scheduled the day off a week ago. I've got that week to do. And now I can track how that extra day off hopefully allows me with some healthy behaviors during that 3-day weekend to bounce back as well.
I love it. Well, definitely a different topic for today, but I think it's very, very topical and probably very interesting for folks who are trying to figure out exactly how do you incorporate this in your day-to-day life. And
yeah,
just for people, again, to know that there's going to be wild deviations, but, really paying attention to the trends and understanding what a week and a month average and those kinds of things, how they can help eliminate burnout and, plan for, help you create that self-care and know when to implement it and all of that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you sharing very personal data with the world. And
Yep. Hey,
I'm
if I
wholly
can't be a guinea
disappointed.
pig, what's the point?
I
So yeah.
thought dropping you off in the ocean with a 50-pound weights and
The data
running,
said I would
hundreds of
sink to
miles
the
was,
bottom at
I
this
thought,
point.
that's what you
So
did every
yeah.
Saturday. So I guess, I definitely learned something today.
San Diego might be nice. I would just probably stay closer to the shore. So yeah.
There you go. Exactly. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I hope this was helpful. Look forward to another great episode next week.
Absolutely. Get the show notes, the book, past episodes, optimalhrv.com. And Jeff, great to see you, my friend. And looking forward. We'll probably jump back, and we promised a group recovery podcast. So we kind of stuck this one in because I had some good data to share, but we'll look at that for our next week's episode. So everybody have a good one and take care of yourselves.
All right. Thanks everybody. Take care.